book. It takes a pillage behind the bailouts, bonuses, and backroom deals from Washington to Wall Street. Nomi, good to have you with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Carol.
You know, you just heard Sue kind of breaking down, Goldman had a record quarter. They had, what was it, $100 million that they're making daily. They did that 71% of the time during the second quarter. I mean, is Goldman so different from everybody else?
Well, Goldman certainly is great at trading. I mean, beyond what it's made every single day, 78% of its record profit revenues did come from its trading operations. So a substantial portion of what it does is related to trading. But not only that, Goldman did have the benefit of a whole lot of additional capital over the last 2 quarters that it received from the fall of last year, the beginning quarter of this year, to help basically plenish a lot of those trading positions. You can't trade without capital, so you got to be good to trade well, but you also have to have the capital to put into the game. And they have received a lot, we should note, of federal capital, not just the $10 billion of TARP money, which they did repay, but another $53 billion worth of federal subsidization.
So you're saying money from you, me, everybody else?
Well, that's absolutely true. They got almost $13 billion through what the federal government gave to AIG, which went to Goldman, even though Goldman said before it received that money that it was hedged against those positions.
Nomi, hang on for a sec. We'll take a break, come back and talk some more. We're talking with Nomi Prins. The subject is Goldman Sachs. Back in a moment. We're back with Nomi Prins, former managing director of Goldman Sachs and author of It Takes a Pillage, Behind the Bailouts, Bonuses, and Backroom Deals from Washington to Wall Street. Pillage, it's in the title of your new book. I mean, when it comes to Goldman and the record profits that they're making, Nomi, is it shameful that they're making so much money, or kudos to them for doing better than everybody else?
Well, I think it's somewhere in between, Carol. It's kudos to them to find a way to use a tremendous portion of public capital or government subsidies in order to turn it into profit. I mean, they could have easily turned it into a loss. They did know how to use that capital to determine how to make a profit, and that does, that does take talent, and that does take being good at trading. But you certainly can't do that without having the capital to begin with, and they did, relative to all other investment banks or investment banks who became commercial banks, as they did when they became a bank holding company last fall, received more public assistance than any other former investment bank.
But to be fair, I mean, Goldman wasn't the only one getting handouts, in several different directions from the government. I mean, they didn't do anything wrong legally. I mean, they were allowed to do this, correct?
Well, they applied under the programs that they had accessible to them. They did do a couple of things, like they became a bank holding company, but they still report their risk figures and therefore their capital requirements relative to their old investment banking status. So they've really tried to play both sides. It's intelligent. It's a very good way to do business, but they are taking advantage of a situation that they have.
Do you think they also take advantage of having such close ties with the government? You know, Nomi, there's been so much, critically so, written about Goldman's close ties with government officials, a lot of former Goldman Sachs people going into government. So do you think they took advantage of that situation when other firms really didn't have that advantage?
Well, absolutely. They were at the table. They were in Washington more than many other firms, and so therefore they definitely had that advantage. Of course, they had the former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, was the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, who also presided over a lot of the decisions that were made when the original, not just bailout money, not just TARP money, but the other types of federal subsidies and assistance came last fall and have continued into the beginning of this year. So absolutely, again, that is an opportunist situation. It's also a situation of reality. They do have that revolving door covered between Washington and Wall Street.
But again, do you fault them for that, or that's just the way it plays out? Or do you feel like there was kind of a backroom deal that was done specifically and only exclusively for Goldman because of those relationships?
It wasn't exclusively for Goldman. They did receive and figure out a way to extract more federal subsidies. Morgan Stanley did get some last year as well when Goldman and Morgan became bank holding companies. So no, it wasn't just Goldman, and yes, they did it really, really well. They are a smart firm. Lloyd Blankfein is a smart CEO, and they figured out a way to change their name, keep their investment banking status, receive the most amount of capital they could, and turn a profit of it. That does does require being good at what they do, and it also requires having tight relationships and being able to bend the ear, not perhaps to get more money than anyone else, which they have relative to other investment banks, but also to put the idea that that money is required by the industry.
Nomi, you mentioned CEO Lloyd Blankfein. There's a story this week about him kind of warning employees to avoid making big-ticket, high-profile purchases. Is really trying to kind of keep a low profile, especially with the White House really kind of ramping up their campaign against high executive compensation. Do you buy it that you think Blankfein's really doing it? You've been inside Goldman. You know the culture. Do you think he really is sending out some strong warning signals?
I think, and this goes again with the fact that Blankfein is smart and wants to keep his business intact and wants to keep paying people. And the less he can get of public scrutiny and, more importantly, congressional scrutiny that could come in the way of how the firm does business or how the firm pays bonuses, the better. So, you know, he's smart. He knows that the winds out there are being very skeptical of Goldman throughout the press and in Congress. There have been letters to the Fed last week from the Senate and the House asking some very pointed questions about what Goldman's done. And I think what Blankfein doesn't want to do is have too much scrutiny come down and affect how the firm can operate.
But should that scrutiny come down? I bring that up because you recently wrote on MotherJones.com that one of the most important things that you learned over your years of working at Wall Street, including your time at Goldman, is that numbers lie. I mean, what are you saying? Are you saying that firms like Goldman are kind of lying when it comes to financials and all the numbers that they have to report here?
You know, I think, and someone actually, many people wrote to me and said it's not numbers that lie, it's people that lie. So I guess somewhere the truth could be in between. But
is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
Is that what you're saying? We've only got about 30 seconds here.
I'm saying that there's a lot of figuring that goes into numbers that come out of Wall Street that don't have an exact science attached to them. Things are run by models, capital requirements are set by models, and there are ways to make things look better than they are in the short term.
All right, we've got to run. Nomi, thanks so much. Enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Nomi Prins, everybody. She's a former Goldman Sachs managing director and author of It Takes a Pillage, Behind the Bailouts, Bonuses, and Backroom Deals from Washington to Wall Street.